There comes a moment in every person's life when they finally understand that the mind, left unattended, becomes its own worst enemy. Not because it seeks to harm us, but because it is wired to survive, not to bring peace. The modern world is louder than any era before it, a constant storm of comparison, expectation, distraction, and noise. It is no wonder that negative thinking grows so easily within it. It thrives in the cracks of a mind that has not learned to govern itself. The ancient Stoics understood this long before our time. They believed the mind could be trained with the same discipline as the body. They believed that clarity is not a gift, but a cultivated skill. And they believed that suffering is not caused by events, but by the interpretations we attach to them. What follows are 7 Stoic laws, not meant to inspire fear, but to liberate you from the unnecessary suffering that negative thinking produces. Read them slowly. Let them settle. Let them challenge you. Let them soften the noise. Star Law 1. The mind becomes what it repeats. The thoughts you entertain are not harmless visitors. They are seeds. Give them enough time and they become the architecture of your inner world. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." This is as true today as it was 2,000 years ago. If you repeatedly imagine worst-case scenarios, your mind will learn to live in constant emergency. If you rehearse fear, you will become fearful. If you dwell on resentment, you will become bitter. If you practice gratitude, you will become peaceful. The mind is obedient. It follows whatever pattern you set. But most people never set a pattern at all. They simply inherit one from their past, from their environment, or from their fears. Stoicism teaches that the mind is not a passive instrument. It is a tool. It is clay. It is trained by repetition. You do not eliminate negativity by force. You weaken it by refusing to rehearse it. You replace it with what is healthier, clearer, and more aligned with who you want to become. Your mind becomes what you feed it, daily, quietly, consistently. Star Law 2. You cannot control events, only your interpretation. Negative thinking grows from the illusion of control. We want the world to behave according to our expectations. When it does not, the mind interprets the deviation as threat. But the Stoics distinguished between events and judgments. Events are neutral. Judgments create suffering. A delayed flight, an unanswered message, a sudden change of plans, a harsh tone of voice. None of these carry meaning on their own. The meaning is supplied by us. Epictetus taught, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by their view of things." This is not a dismissal of hardship. It is an invitation to realize that your power lies not in shaping the world, but in shaping the way you meet it. When you release the need for things to unfold your way, the mind settles. When you stop insisting on outcomes you cannot command, peace returns. Control is not found in the outer world. It is found in the inner lens through which you see it. Star Law 4. The present moment is the only place where peace exists. Negative thinking gains power by pulling you away from the present. It drags you backward into memory, or forward into imagination. The past brings regret. The future brings fear. But the present, the only moment that actually exists, is quiet. Marcus Aurelius observed that every moment is bearable if you face it alone, without the weight of yesterday or the anticipation of tomorrow. Most people suffer not because the moment is difficult, but because they add the entire past or the entire future onto the moment. A conversation becomes frightening, not because of the words spoken, but because of the imagined consequences. A decision becomes heavy, not because it is inherently complex, but because of the fear of all possible outcomes. But life only ever asks you one thing: to handle this moment, not every moment that could ever exist. When you return to the present, you return to simplicity. When you stop living in psychological time, you stop drowning in hypothetical suffering. Peace does not exist in memory. It does not exist in anticipation. It exists only here, in the breath you are currently taking. Star Law 5. You are not your thoughts, you are the observer. Much of your suffering comes from assuming that every thought you have is true simply because it appears in your mind. But the Stoics made a crucial distinction. Your thoughts are not you. They are weather patterns moving through consciousness. You are the sky, not the storm. A negative thought does not define you. A fearful thought does not limit you. A critical thought does not expose truth. It simply rises, intensifies, and eventually dissolves. The Stoics called this practice objective perception. It is the ability to see a thought without believing it. To say, a fearful thought is present, instead of, I am afraid. To say, a critical thought has appeared, instead of, I am inadequate. This shift sounds small, yet it changes everything. When you observe rather than identify, the mind loosens its grip on you. Thoughts lose their authority. You become spacious enough to choose your response. You become free. Star Law 5. What you avoid controls you. Avoidance is the silent author of negative thinking. The more you avoid a fear, the stronger it becomes. The more you avoid a truth, the louder it grows in the dark. Seneca warned that he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. When you avoid a difficult conversation, the mind fills the silence with worst-case scenarios. When you avoid a decision, the mind invents consequences. When you avoid discomfort, the mind becomes hypersensitive to it. The Stoics believed that you defeat fear not by running from it, but by walking directly into the territory where you once felt powerless. Avoidance strengthens fear. Action dissolves it. Every time you face something you once avoided, you teach the mind a new truth, that you are capable of meeting reality as it is. This is how inner strength is built.
Law 6.
Quietly,
Gratitude is
consistently,
the antidote
one
to worry.
small act of courage
Stoics
at a
were
time.
not sentimental optimists. They were realists who understood that gratitude is not about pretending everything is good, but about recognizing that not everything is bad. The human mind has a natural tendency to scan for danger, to notice threats, to anticipate loss. Gratitude interrupts this default pattern. It is not a denial of difficulty, it is a correction of imbalance. Marcus Aurelius often wrote reminders to himself to notice the beauty in ordinary things, the sunrise, the changing seasons, the simplicity of nature. Why? Because to see clearly, one must not only notice what is painful, but also what is present, what is stable, what is working. Gratitude shifts the mind from scarcity to sufficiency, from fear to perspective. It does not erase problems, it simply prevents problems from erasing everything else. Law 7. Peace comes from living in alignment with your values. Negative thinking often signals misalignment. When you live in a way that contradicts your deeper values, the mind reacts with unrest. If you value honesty but avoid telling the truth, the mind becomes anxious. If you value discipline but live in distraction, the mind becomes restless. If you value growth but remain stagnant, the mind becomes critical. The Stoics believed that peace comes not from comfort, not from ease, not from luck, but from integrity. When your actions reflect your values, your mind no longer lives in internal conflict. Peace is not an emotion. It is the natural result of the self not betraying the self. Conclusion. The quiet mind is not born, it is built. A calm mind is not the absence of thought, it is the mastery of thought. A strong mind is not the absence of fear, it is the willingness to meet fear with clarity rather than panic. A peaceful mind is not gifted, it is developed through practice, reflection, discipline, and daily self-awareness. The 7 Stoic laws do not promise a life without difficulty. They promise something far better: the ability to meet life with stability, courage, and wisdom. Negative thoughts will still appear, but they will no longer steer the ship. You will.
Part 2. Rewiring the Inner Lens, a Stoic approach to mental clarity. A calm, reflective expansion, approximately 1,500 plus words. If Part 1 explored the foundation of how negative thinking arises, Part 2 dives into the deeper layers, the inner lens through which you interpret the world and the hidden habits that shape your emotional life. Most people believe their suffering is caused by events. They say, "My anxiety comes from what happened. My sadness comes from the situation. My stress is because of them." But the Stoics saw something different. They understood that the mind does not suffer from reality, it suffers from its interpretation of reality. Between what happens and what you feel about what happens, there is a space. In that space lies your freedom. This second part will teach you how to widen that space, how to see clearly, think calmly, and free yourself from the mental habits that quietly reinforce negativity. Star 1. The Stoic practice of internal framing. The Stoics believed that the way you frame an event determines its emotional impact. Two people can experience the same difficulty and interpret it completely differently. One sees insult, the other sees misunderstanding. One sees failure, the other sees feedback. One sees unfairness, the other sees an opportunity to practice strength. It is not the event, but the frame that creates suffering. Imagine a window. If the glass is cracked, everything outside will appear distorted. But the distortion is not in the world, it's in the window. Your mind works the same way. When your internal framing is distorted by fear, insecurity, or old wounds, everything you see becomes tinted by them. A neutral comment becomes criticism. An unexpected change becomes a threat. A slow reply becomes rejection. A setback becomes a verdict on your worth. Stoic training is the art of cleaning the window. The practice is simple but not easy. Before reacting, pause and ask, What else could this mean? Am I seeing this clearly or through the lens of emotion? What would this event look like if I removed my assumptions? The moment you ask these questions, the emotional fog begins to lift. Clarity replaces chaos. A calm mind sees options. An agitated mind sees danger. Internal framing is the bridge between the two. 2. Discomfort as information, not threat. Negative thinking often arises from misinterpreting discomfort. We assume discomfort means something is wrong, but the Stoics believed that discomfort is simply information. It tells you where you need to grow. It reveals old wounds that still shape your behavior. It exposes areas of life you've avoided. It illuminates fears you haven't faced. Modern culture treats discomfort as a sign to retreat. Stoicism treats discomfort as a sign to examine. Not to push it away, but to sit with it. Not to drown in it, but to understand it. When you interpret discomfort as danger, your mind goes into self-defense, catastrophizing, worrying, overthinking. But when you interpret discomfort as teacher, you become curious instead of afraid. You ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Why does this situation activate me? What belief is being challenged right now? In this way, discomfort becomes a mirror, one that shows you the places where growth has been waiting. The Stoics did not chase pain. They simply refused to let discomfort define the situation. Growth begins the moment discomfort becomes data instead of danger. 3. The art of gentle self-inquiry. Negative thinking often thrives in minds that never pause long enough to examine their assumptions. The Stoics practiced daily self-inquiry, a gentle, reflective form of questioning that brings unconscious patterns to the surface. This was not self-judgment, it was self-honesty. At the end of each day, they asked themselves, where did my mind stray today? What story did I tell myself that wasn't true? Which emotion carried me away? What could I have seen more clearly? This practice dissolves negativity because it brings awareness to the automatic patterns that normally go unquestioned. When you ask yourself these questions, you stop being a passenger inside your own mind. You become the navigator. Self-inquiry does not demand perfection. It asks for attention. It invites you to wake up from the mechanical drama of thought and return to conscious awareness. Over time, this practice becomes a form of inner hygiene, clearing the mental dust before it becomes emotional weight. 4. The power of neutral observation. One of the greatest Stoic skills is the ability to observe an event without immediately assigning meaning to it. This is called objective perception. For example, someone frowns at you. The untrained mind thinks, they're upset with me. They don't respect me. I must have done something wrong. The Stoic mind thinks, they frowned. Nothing more. The story that follows is optional. Most of your suffering comes from the stories you add to neutral events. Neutral observation is the practice of stripping away assumptions, emotional predictions, unnecessary narratives, invented threats. This does not make you cold. It makes you accurate. You see reality clearly, not through the lens of fear or desire.
When you master neutral observation, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop assuming and start understanding. And most importantly, you stop adding psychological pain to an already difficult world.
Star V. Managing expectations, the hidden source of suffering. If you examine your recent frustrations, you'll notice a pattern. You weren't hurt by what happened. You were hurt because what happened did not match what you expected. Expectations are often invisible, yet they shape your emotional life more than any external event. The Stoics taught that expectations are the birthplace of disappointment. When you expect people to behave a certain way, you become fragile. When you expect comfort, you become soft. When you expect smoothness, you become unprepared for reality. Lowering expectations does not mean losing hope, or lowering your standards, or becoming indifferent. It means understanding that life unfolds as it must, not as you wish. Instead of demanding the world align with your preferences, you meet the world as it is. This shift brings an immediate quietness to the mind. You stop fighting reality. You stop resisting the nature of people. You stop expecting unbroken comfort. And in that surrender, you find stability. Because the mind that expects nothing can appreciate everything. Star 6. The Stoic practice of micro-control. Stoicism is often summarized by one principle: control what you can, release what you cannot. But the Stoics went even deeper. They practiced what could be called micro-control, the art of focusing on the smallest controllable action rather than the entire situation. For example, you cannot control the future, but you can control your next step. You cannot control others' behavior, but you can control your tone. You cannot control an outcome, but you can control your effort. Negative thinking grows when the mind tries to control the entire landscape at once. Calm thinking grows when the mind reduces life to the next clear action. Micro-control quiets the mind because it removes overwhelm. It replaces "I have so much to handle" with "I know exactly what to do next." This approach simplifies life to something manageable. Peace is not found by controlling everything. It is found by mastering the next small thing. Star 7. Returning to the body when the mind is loud. The Stoics understood that the body is often calmer than the mind. When the mind becomes noisy, they returned to the anchors of physical presence: the breath, the sensations of the feet on the ground, the expansion of the chest, the feeling of air moving through the nose, the weight of the body in the chair. This practice resembles modern mindfulness, but to the Stoics it was simply returning to what is undeniably real. The body lives in the present. The mind wanders into imagination. When you reconnect with the body, you pull the mind back into reality. And reality is usually far less dramatic than the mind's projections. A calm breath can interrupt panic. A moment of stillness can interrupt overthinking. A single conscious inhale can stop an emotional spiral before it carries you away. The Stoics were not trying to escape the mind. They were trying to guide it home. Star 8. Letting go of the need for certainty.
A significant part of negative thinking comes from the mind's desperate attempt to guarantee the future. But the Stoics viewed certainty as a form of illusion. The more you try to control tomorrow, the more anxious today becomes. You do not need certainty to move forward. You need steadiness. Certainty is impossible. Steadiness is a choice. The Stoics embraced uncertainty willingly because they understood that freedom comes not from predicting life, but from being prepared for life. When you let go of the need for everything to be predictable, you gain the flexibility required to handle anything. Uncertainty is not the enemy. Your resistance to it is. Star 9. The mind settles when you live simply. Stoic calm is not accidental. It is built by simplifying life. The more obligations you carry, the more noise fills the mind. The more desires you chase, the more restless you become. The Stoics aimed for a life that was rich in meaning and minimal in clutter. Not because simplicity is aesthetic, but because simplicity is clarity. You cannot think clearly in a life overflowing with excess. Excess possessions, excess commitments, excess comparisons, excess noise. The mind becomes calm when life becomes intentional. Simplicity is not deprivation. It is strategic removal, clearing space for what truly matters. Star 10. The ending of Part 2. The beginning of inner quiet. Part 2 has revealed a quiet truth. Negative thinking is not a monster to be defeated. It is a pattern to be understood. When you shift the lens through which you see life, your emotional world transforms. Events soften. Fear loosens. Interpretations expand. Perspective deepens. Peace begins not with control, but with clarity. The mind becomes calm not when it stops producing thoughts, but when it stops believing every thought it produces. Part 3 will take you deeper into practices that build unshakable inner strength and into the Stoic methods for long-term mental transformation.
Part 3. Building the Unshakable Mind, a Stoic Blueprint for Inner Freedom. A calm, reflective, deeply expanded conclusion, approximately 1,500 plus words. If Part 1 revealed the roots of negative thinking, and Part 2 explored the subtle lenses that shape perception, then Part 3 takes us into the heart of Stoic practice. How to build a mind that does not collapse under pressure. A mind that does not run from discomfort. A mind that remains steady, regardless of the storms around it. The Stoics did not chase happiness. They chased inner freedom. The kind of freedom that comes from mastering yourself. Not the world, not other people, not circumstances. Yourself. This final section is not about avoiding negative thoughts. It is about becoming the kind of person who cannot be ruled by them. This is the blueprint for the unshakable mind. The Stoic discipline of emotional minimalism. People believe they suffer because life is difficult, but often they suffer because they carry far more emotions than the situation requires. The Stoics practiced something like emotional minimalism, feeling only what is necessary, nothing more. Not suppressing emotions, but pruning them. For example, you feel irritation, but do you need anger on top of irritation? You feel sadness, But do you need self-blame and rumination on top of sadness? You feel uncertainty. But do you need catastrophic imagining on top of uncertainty? Most emotions become destructive because they multiply. A simple difficulty becomes heavy when the mind adds layers of interpretation, layers of assumptions, layers of unnecessary suffering. Emotional minimalism is the practice of staying with the first emotion without creating a second, third, or fourth. The first emotion is human. The additional ones are optional. When you learn to feel only what the moment truly requires, peace begins to return. 2. The strength of voluntary discomfort. The Stoics trained themselves in voluntary discomfort to build resilience long before difficulty arrived naturally. They took cold baths. They walked without shoes. They practiced sleeping on the floor. They deprived themselves of unnecessary luxuries. Not to punish themselves, but to prepare themselves. Voluntary discomfort teaches the mind that difficulty is survivable. Because discomfort in reality is less frightening when you choose it. It becomes familiar. It becomes manageable. It becomes something you can navigate rather than something you fear. Today, voluntary discomfort looks different. Turning off your phone for the evening, delaying gratification, waking up early, practicing silence over stimulation, finishing tasks you want to avoid, exercising discipline when it is inconvenient. These are modern versions of ancient training. When you choose discomfort deliberately, life's unavoidable discomforts no longer overwhelm you. You become stronger than your resistance to life. 3. The power of delayed reaction. A reactive mind is a chaotic mind. The Stoics put great emphasis on the power of delaying reaction. When something triggers you, you don't respond immediately. You don't act on impulse. You don't follow the first emotional wave. You pause. This pause, this small, quiet moment, is where wisdom lives. Marcus Aurelius often wrote reminders to himself to wait and consider, to allow emotions to settle before deciding what the event truly meant. Negative thinking often comes from the mind reacting faster than understanding can arrive. A delayed reaction allows space for clarity. It transforms anger into curiosity, fear into analysis, anxiety into planning, defensiveness into perspective. Your first impulse is usually survival. Your second impulse is often wisdom. The pause is what allows you to reach the second impulse without being carried away by the first. 4. Practicing negative visualization to reduce fear. This Stoic technique sounds dark at first, but it is the opposite. It is liberating. Negative visualization is imagining how things could go wrong, not to worry about them, but to prepare emotionally. When you calmly imagine challenges before they come, you are less shaken when they arrive. Modern life teaches avoidance. Don't think about bad possibilities. They will stress you. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Think about them calmly. They will strengthen you. By visualizing potential difficulties, you achieve 3 things. You appreciate what you currently have, you reduce anxiety about what might come, and you condition your mind to remain steady during hardship. This practice does not make you pessimistic. It makes you ready. Fear loses power when your mind has already met the scenario once before.
6. Amor fati, the strength of loving what life gives you. One of the most profound Stoic ideas is amor fati, the love of fate. Not tolerating fate, not accepting fate, loving it.
This does not mean loving misfortune. It means understanding that everything that happens is raw material for your growth. A difficulty becomes a lesson. A failure becomes direction. A disappointment becomes wisdom. A hardship becomes resilience. Nothing is wasted when seen through the lens of amor fati. Negative thinking loses power when you stop resisting life and start working with it. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the Stoic asks, "How can this shape me?" When you approach life with this mindset, you stop seeing events as enemies. You see them as participants in your evolution. Life becomes an ally. 7. The importance of living with a clear inner code. A person who has no inner code is easily shaken, easily influenced, easily lost. But a person who knows what they stand for cannot be broken by external circumstances. The Stoics lived by principles that anchored them: integrity, courage, self-control, humility, responsibility, wisdom. When you live according to your principles, negative thinking weakens because your decisions become clear. There is nothing to overthink when your principles dictate your path. You no longer negotiate with fear. You no longer bargain with distraction. You no longer debate with impulse. Your inner code becomes your compass. With it, you move steadily, even in uncertainty. 8. Releasing the weight of the unimportant. A large portion of your mental suffering comes from caring about too many things, too many opinions, too many decisions, too many comparisons, too many expectations, too many imagined scenarios. The Stoics freed themselves by letting go of what did not matter. Ask yourself, will this matter a month from now? Will this matter a year from now? Does this contribute to my character? Does this align with my values? Is this worth my inner peace? Most things will not pass these questions. When you stop carrying the unnecessary, the mind suddenly becomes light. Negative thinking cannot survive in a mind that refuses to hold clutter. Let go of what is not essential, and you will realize you were never overwhelmed by life, only by what you added to it. 9. The unshakable mind is built through consistency. The Stoics taught that wisdom is not an epiphany, it is a practice. A calm mind is not created in one day of clarity, meditation, or discipline. It is created in the repetition of small choices: pausing before reacting, breathing before judging, observing before assuming, reflecting before repeating a mistake, taking responsibility rather than blaming, simplifying rather than complicating. These are small choices, but daily choices, and daily choices shape destiny. Consistency builds identity. Identity builds strength. Strength builds peace. The Stoics did not aim to become perfect. They aimed to become consistent. Perfection is unreachable, but consistency changes lives. 10. The final lesson. You become what you practice. The unshakable mind is not a personality trait. It is a repeated practice. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, you strengthen the mind. Every time you choose courage over avoidance, you strengthen the mind. Every time you choose the present moment over imagination, you strengthen the mind. Eventually,
Your mind learns. It learns that it doesn't have to panic. It learns that it doesn't have to catastrophize. It learns that you, the conscious, aware, disciplined part of you, are in charge. This is the true promise of Stoicism. Not a life without difficulty, but a mind that is not destroyed by difficulty. A mind that sees clearly. A mind that moves steadily. A mind that returns to peace. A mind you can trust. The unshakable mind is the quietest kind of strength, and it is available to you, not in some distant future, but in the small choices you make today.